Welcome to the Pearl of the Indian Ocean. We are very happy to receive all of you here at the University of Colombo School of Computing for the 11th annual Vidya Jyothi, Professor V.K. Samaranayake Memorial Oration, and the inauguration of the 18th IEEE International Conference on Advances in ICT for Emerging Regions. To mark the initiation of today's ceremony, let's light the traditional oil lamp. For this, I would like to invite Professor Lakshman Disanayake, the Vice Chancellor of University of Colombo, Dr. Kevin Seneviratne, the orator of the 11th Annual Memorial Oration, Professor K.P. Hewagamage, the Director of UCSC, Professor K.R.R. Mahanama, Dean of Faculty of Science, Mrs. S. Samaranayake, wife of late Professor V.K. Samaranayake, Registrar of University of Colombo, Professor Koichi Yamada, keynote speaker and professor at Nagoka University of Technology, Japan, Professor Christian Rohner, keynote speaker and professor at Department of Information Technology, Uppsala University, Sweden, Dr. Prasad Vimalaratna, head of Department of Communication and Media Technologies of UCSC, Dr. Jeevani Gunatilaka, head of Department of Information Systems Engineering of UCSC, and Mr. G.K.A. Diaz, Mr. G.K.A. Diaz, the chairperson of ICTER 2018, and also all the deans and the rectors of all the other faculties. Ladies and gentlemen, over the next few days, this year's meetings will provide you plenty of opportunities to share knowledge and insights. And this evening is a great platform for all of you to mix and mingle with the exceptional personalities from all over the globe. I would like to extend my warmest welcome to the guests of today's ceremony, directors and the management board of UCSC, academic and the administrative staff. And now, to honor the state, please rise for the national anthem. Teachers lay the foundation of knowledge in every person's life. They not only educate us, but they teach us the essence of life. I would like to utilize this moment to thank Vidya Jyothi, Professor V.K. Samaranayake, the father of information technology in Sri Lanka, and all our lecturers, past and present, who prepare us for the world outside. Our teachers have been an epitome of strength and a great pillar of support to all of us. Please join me in 1 minute silence period in order to remember and extend our gratitude to all of these wonderful human beings. Please be seated. UCSC has been annually organizing the Vidya Jyothi Professor V.K. Samaranayake Memorial Oration since 2007 to express its gratitude and as an appreciation for the enormous service rendered by the late Professor V.K. Samaranayake, the founding director of UCSC. Here at UCSC, we experience and enjoy education and extracurricular activities through the guidance of charismatic leaders who thrive to uphold UCSC as a global leader in computing. Thus, I feel privileged to invite on stage Professor K.P. Hewagamage, the director of UCSC, to welcome all of you to this wonderful evening.
Very good evening to all of you. On behalf of the University of Colombo School of Computing, it is my pleasure and privilege to extend a warm welcome to all of you to the most important annual academic events of UCSC. The 11th Memorial Oration of late Professor Vidya Jyothi V.K. Samaranayake and the inauguration of the 18th International Conference on Advances in ICT for Emerging Regions, ICTA. Before we proceed, I would like to express my most sincere gratitude for your presence and thanks in this ceremony. Especially want to welcome some of the special invitees for the event, especially the Senior Professor Lakshman Disanayake, Vice Chancellor, University of Colombo, and all the deans of the University of Colombo who are present here, and the rector of the Sri Pali campus, other directors, as well as Mrs. Shriya Samaranayake, the wife of the late Professor V.K. Samaranayake, the orator, Dr. Kevin Seneviratne, all keynote speakers of the ICTA conference, and other special invitees, including the staff of the members of the University of Colombo. As we know, late Professor V.K. Samaranayake, who was named as the father of the IT in Sri Lanka, is a legendary leader to initiate sustainable development in computing in this country. 50 years ago, he had started teaching Fortran programming, not only for the students in the science faculty, but other faculties as well. Although computing is a discipline in between science and engineering, it has become an applied area in all other academic disciplines. Many others took several decades to understand such evolution, but I think Professor Samaranayake understood this at the very beginning. He was not an ordinary academic who considered only academic development within his workplace. As we know, he always wanted to contribute the national development while expanding and strengthening the institutional capacity of the University of Colombo. Small computer unit in the Faculty of Science finally became a strongest faculty after 5 decades, as the UCSC. Therefore, it is our duty to respect him annually, not only remembering him and his work, but also practicing the academic path inspired by him. This is the main reason to combine the Professor Samaranayake's memorial oration and the international conference ICTA 2018. This memorial oration is the most important academic activity of UCSC carried out during the last 10 years. We usually invite distinguished speakers who were well known to the late Professor Samaranayake to speak on evolution of computing. And this year, we have invited Dr. Seneviratne, the former head of the Department of Statistics and Computer Science, DSCS, in Faculty of Science, a well-known academic personality in the University of Colombo. When we were undergraduates in this university, we saw him as the second in command in the faculty, in the department, and to contribute many initiatives started by the Professor Samaranayake. Especially, he worked very hardly to institutionalization of computing in the Faculty of Science. Many of staff members, including myself, is at the UCSC because of Dr. Seneviratne. After the oration, we inaugurated the 18th International Conference on Advances in ICT for Emerging Regions, ICTA 2018. This was started in 1998 as the first conference in information technology in Sri Lanka under the guidance of Professor Samaranayake. Today, it has become a platform for dissemination of the research work, not only at the cutting edge of computing, but also research that address the real problems in emerging regions. The final proceedings of the ICTA conference has been published in IEEE Explorer since 2010. Without moving into further details, once again, I would like to welcome all participants, including the special invitees, to commence the proceedings of the oration and the conference. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor, for your valuable words. Now I would like to call upon Professor Lakshman Dissanayake, Vice Chancellor of University of Colombo, to address the gathering.
Very good evening to all of you. Dr. Seneviratne, the orator today, and his wife, Malika, Madam Samaranayake, Professor Hewagamage, the director of UCSC, and his staff, academic, administrative staff, as well as non-academics. Professor Emeritus J.B. Dissanayake, my Sinhala Guru, and all my colleagues, the deans, the rector, and all my colleagues from the other faculties and institutes, distinguished invitees, dear students, ladies and gentlemen. First, I would like to thank the director UCSC and his staff for inviting me to attend this occasion, which I don't want to actually miss also, because Professor Samaranayake was my computer guru as well as my statistics guru. Although I come from the Faculty of Arts, I had the chance of learning computer science a bit, not like the UCSC staff. So I really don't want to miss something like this because we are commemorating his work, and also this is for us to actually remember him. I don't think anybody can forget, a personality like Professor Samaranayake, right? And also, I'm very happy that Dr. Kevin Seneviratne accepted the invitation to come here as the memorial orator, because Kevin and I worked together in that small statistical unit where the origin of the UCSC, a long time back, it was actually more than 40 years ago, where we worked together and taught statistics for both arts students as well as science, especially the biostatistics for botany people. And we shared the same small room at the maths building. And I can't forget Malika also. She was at the statistical unit staff. Long history, but very sweet memories when you actually think about those days. And when I met Kevin yesterday, it was very nice feeling, Kevin. I'm very thankful to both of you for coming all the way from Melbourne and accepting this invitation from the UCSC. And also, when you look at the topic, the theme of the conference, and also the topic of the oration, a journey from applied statistics to data science and beyond, and also the conferences and advances in ICT for emerging regions. So this goes parallel with the research symposium of the University of Colombo. I'm not an IT guy, but I know the value of it. I am a social scientist. I am a demographer. But I know where the world is heading for now. And we have to align the universities with that trend, otherwise we will be left alone. So the future of the world and also the universities are with AI, artificial intelligence, machine learning, and big data, data science or data analytics. That's where we are heading for. It doesn't mean that it is open only for the science-based disciplines in the universities. The AI, the machine learning, the big data, data science and analytics cannot actually stand alone without the disciplines of social sciences and humanities. This is what I have been actually telling my colleagues in the Faculty of Arts. You see now, don't forget, this is the future. This is where we are heading for. We need to, because without understanding the social behavior of people or the societies or communities, you will not be able to actually get into AIs, machine learning and all these things, because that is where the behavioral factors, the factors influencing all these behaviors come from. And also the consequences of AI and machine learning will be studied by the social scientists. The consequences to the societies. So there is a strong link between the science-based discipline and also the social sciences sciences and humanities, because AI, the machine learning, and the big data will actually link those two areas together. So that is the beauty that we see with these new emerging areas. You see now, I am a demographer, I just said so. And world is aging. Sri Lanka is also aging, not because that I am actually aging. So I'm getting older. But that's the fact. World is aging very fast. And Sri Lanka is also aging very fast. Now in 2012, we had about 12.2% of our population 60 plus years of age. And according to my projections, by 2037, we'll have about 22.1% of people 60 plus years of age. And by 2032, actually, the proportion of young population will be decreasing to the below the level of what you observe in the proportion of old population. You see, the proportion of old population is increasing, and the proportion of the young population will be decreasing. So there will be so much people accumulated at the age 60 and above. So there will be, this is what I have been actually trying to tell people, because of the improvement of health, hygienic conditions, the medical technology, all have supported us to improve our survival chances. So there will be centenarians and super centenarians. Yes, centenaries, 100 years of age, and 115 years of age. That is what we see in other parts of the world. And that is what we are going to see, for sure, in Sri Lanka as well. So there are a lot of things that the AI, the machine learning can do, especially AI. And I'm a bit scared also. So there will be a lot of old people sitting in rooms or in their bedrooms together with some robots at their elderly age to get the care for the elders. And also one of the questions that I always ask, you see now you work for about 30, 40 years in your job. Once you retire at the age of 60, now if you are going to live up to 100 years of age, what are you going to do for another 40 years? Just be redundant? Those are some of the things that we have to actually answer. Are we ready for that? So are there any answers from the AIs, machine learning, and all these new emerging areas? I'm not the keynote speaker, he's there, right? I'm sorry. I'm very much interested actually, because I know Kevin very well. We have worked together. Although I left statistics unit to demography department, we always had very close connections. And I look forward to listening to your oration, Kevin. And I'm so happy, and I'm very thankful to the director and his staff. So day by day, the place is improving, and you can see the facility available here at the UCSC. This is a wonderful place, actually. I always try to market this place to my other colleagues also. Why don't you have your conferences, the workshops, etc. here at the UCSC auditorium? And with that brief note, I hope that you will really enjoy today's event here at the UCSC. I wish you all the best. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor, for those valuable words. UCSC is privileged to have the presence of a well-known personality as the orator of the 11th Memorial Oration, a journey from applied statistics to data sciences and beyond. Thus, the very well-recognized orator will be formally introduced by Dr. G.D.S.P. Vimalaratne, Head of Department of Communication and Media Technologies of UCSC. So we'd like to very warmly invite Dr. Vimalaratne on stage for the introduction of the orator.
Good evening. Professor Samaranayake, Vice Chancellor of the University of Colombo, Deans of the Faculties, Rector of Sri Pali Campus, Directors of Institutes, Registrar of the University of Colombo, distinguished guests, Mrs. Samaranayake, Dr. Kevin Seneviratne, our editor today, Director and the staff of the UCSC, students, ladies and gentlemen. Today we are celebrating the 11th annual Vidya Jyothi Professor Samaranayake Memorial Oration. This year we are also celebrating 51 years of computing at the University of Colombo. I am pleased and privileged to introduce this year's orator, Dr. Eardley Kevin Seneviratne today. Dr. Seneviratne obtained both his BSc in Mathematics and MSc in Applied Statistics from the University of Colombo, and his PhD in Statistical Computing from the University of Reading in the United Kingdom. He closely worked with late Professor Samaranayake from 1979 to 1995, first as an analyst programmer, subsequently as an assistant lecturer, and a senior lecturer. Dr. Seneviratne was actively involved in setting up of the Statistical Consultancy and Data Processing Service Center at the University of Colombo, and later the Department of Statistics and Computer Science in 1985. He served as head of the Department of DSCs from 1990 to 1995 for 5 years. He was well respected among students as an excellent teacher who had the distinct ability to teach both applied statistics and computer science. In fact, he was the first person to teach a machine learning course in undergraduate and postgraduate courses in Sri Lanka. He also served several other universities, including the University of Moratuwa, University of Ruhuna, and University of Kelaniya as an assistant lecturer during his period at University of Colombo. Dr. Seneviratne was one of the key persons responsible for establishing the first ever BSc in Computer Science at the University of Colombo. He also played a significant role in launching the first ever MSc program in Computer Science in Sri Lanka in 1985. He also took a lead role in setting up of several computer laboratories at the university, such as the HP Lab, Data General Lab, NEC Lab, Sun Microsystems Lab, Unisys Lab, BBC Micro Lab, and several other PC laboratories. He also served as a technical advisor to the Computer Information and Technology Council of Sri Lanka, SINTEC. Through SINTEC, he served many government and private sector organizations in automating their systems. I am pleased to note that Dr. Seneviratne contributed immensely to make late Professor Samaranayake's dreams come true. He migrated to Melbourne, Australia in 1995. Since then, Dr. Seneviratne has worked in different capacities at several startup companies as well as large corporate sector organizations. During his period from 1995 to 2018, he has served as a lead developer, Oracle DBA, Oracle Exadata specialist, payment card industry security consultant, database performance tuning expert, and a data wrangler. He was a lead developer and designer of large PCI compliant database applications containing over 20 million credit card records. He's a data scientist, a data science expert with interest in migration of traditional data warehouses to cloud-based Spark clusters, machine learning, and chatbots. With this positive note, I would like to invite our orator, Dr. Kevin Seneviratne, to deliver the 11th annual Vidya Jyothi Professor Samaranayake Oration titled, A Journey from Applied Statistics to Data Science and Beyond. Thank you very much.
Prior to the commencement of the oration by Dr. Seneviratne, we'll be inviting the Director of UCSC, Professor K.P. Hewagamage, to garland Dr. Seneviratne with the Oration Medal. So we'd like to very warmly invite Professor Hewagamage for the garlanding, and thereafter we will commence the oration.
Vice Chancellor, sir, Mrs. Samaranayake, all the distinguished academics of the University of Colombo, and ladies and gentlemen, it's with a whole wide variety of emotions that I stand here. Probably the primary emotion is being given the ability to talk about my professor, Professor Samaranayake, with whom I worked with from 1979 to 1995. And when trying to choose a topic, I had two competing roles. I wanted to talk about technology, and I wanted to talk about prof as well. Right? So I thought I would somehow merge the two, and what I should have called this title is not that. What I should have called it is Tales from the Past and Visions of the Future. Right? But that dawned on me about halfway through writing this, so it was a bit too late to change the title. Anyway, back to emotions. So I'm feeling about three separate emotions. One is a great sense of joy. As I look around, there are quite a few of my heroes in this room, people who I really look up to. There are a number of colleagues and students, and unfortunately students of students as well, which sort of shows my age. The second emotion is one of sadness, right? We've lost Professor Samaranayake, he's moved on. Professor Gihan Vikramanayake, Mr. Samantilaka, Prof's late peon, I used to always call him the experimental peon, Mahipala. And all we have are the things they did and a lot of precious memories. There are a few other emotions which are very complex. probably the biggest one at the moment is relief that I haven't passed out in sheer fright of addressing this organization, this esteemed gathering. I'm still standing and I'm talking coherently, hopefully. Now, we've been here for about a week, and we spent a bit of time in the department, the faculty. What do they call themselves now? The University of Colombo School of Computing. And I'm so proud to see what they've actually achieved, over the years. The fact that they now have close to 1,000 undergraduates and 500 postgraduates, I just find it staggering that with 38 cadre positions, they can sustain that. And being a bit of a skeptic, I used to work with Prof, you're always skeptical. I sort of asked a few of the students what they think about the quality. And the reputation of this place is certainly as good as it ever was. So that's a monumental achievement to be able to scale up to those levels and to get there. Now, there's a slight problem. If Prof was around, he'd look at it and he'd be thrilled, and he'd be very complimentary for probably about 5 minutes. And then he'd want to know, what are you going to do next, right? Prof had no idea how to rest on his laurels. He had no idea how to do that. He was always looking at the next step, and the step after that, and the step after that. So one thing the members of staff need to think is, how do you plan for the future, right? Are you planning in 5 years' time to have 10,000 students? If so, where on earth are you going to house them, right? So there's a lot of complex things. So while it's good to enjoy where you've got to now, there's a lot of future planning that's required. Given the caliber of staff and the abilities of the people running the show, I don't think that will be too much of a problem. Now, you all would have noticed that I keep referring to Professor Vidya, Jyothi, V.K. Samaranayake as Prof. You probably think I'm not from a technical background, no? I can hardly make the slides work. But trust me, I do know a little bit about... Now, you all would have noticed that I keep referring to Professor Samaranayake as Prof, right? All the other professors in the faculty needed either initials or a surname to distinguish who you were talking about. Prof was just Prof. You could walk into any place in the university and say things like, Prof Cuba. They'd know exactly who the Prof you were referring to was, right? Amazing attribute. He was widely just known as Prof. Now, a bit of personal history. The reason I'm putting this up there is to pin this whole talk together. I think we went through a fair bit of these, but I did graduate in 1978, and I was hired by Prof. And then he sent me off to do a PhD. At that particular point, I had no interest in actually getting into the academic side of things. I was more interested in sort of being a more technical computing sort of person. But Prof had other ideas, so in due preference to his insistence, I went off and did a PhD, came back and became an academic. So we taught applied statistics, computer science, we did all kinds of things. And anybody who knows Prof would have known that one of his key attributes is he wanted things done. He was never a man who was satisfied. He had no idea how to be satisfied. He finished one thing, he wanted to start a couple of hundred other things. He finished those, he'd want to start 200. He just kept going and going and going. And at times it was quite frustrating, right? But when you look back, it's just amazing the kind of vision he had. So what I want to do, what I want to actually do is to talk a bit about some of the insights that Prof had and how he visualized things as far back as the 1980s, things that are actually happening to date, and then talk a bit about the technology. Mr. Nandasara gave me this picture. There's a couple of things that are a bit strange there. One is I'm actually sitting down in the presence of Prof. Normally we all stood bolt upright, right? None of this sitting down. I think the reason I'm sitting down is he told me to sit down, right? Otherwise I'd be standing bolt upright. I remember we had to go to Prof's house and for some occasion, and we were sort of sitting down, but every time Prof walked by, instinct made us stand up. So there were 3 of us and we kept standing up, and after a while Prof turned around and said, "Mokada, kiripanu gayada." At which point we sat down and with great determination stayed seated. Right? So this is a bit, the other strange thing is my stomach is only about 5% of my body weight in that picture. Currently it's about 75%. I really need to do something about it. Right, now I'll go through some insights. Now, as way back as 1979, Prof really understood that data was a key thing. He understood that data was key. Computing and computer science and everything else was very young, but Prof understood that machinery is not the big deal, right? Machinery is only the means to things. He really understood that data and being able to write code, those were the absolutely critical things. You needed machinery, so he went out and brought machinery in by the bucketful, right? But that wasn't the end game. He understood that. If you look at where the world is currently, right, everything is data driven. I work for a company currently where the new CIO, they got rid of the older generation, so there's a new generation there. He has a nice Apple Mac, and on the back of it he has a label saying "code beautifully." He is the chief information officer of the company, second in command of the company, and he has 24 data scientists who report directly to him. He doesn't want them reporting to anybody else, they report directly to him, right? So as far as he's concerned, data and code, right? This is 2018. Prof figured this out in 1979, right? I just find that amazing that he could distill the things that were really important and separate it from all the noise. You look at the current world as it is, people are getting rid of data centers. The company I work for, they're trying to close down 2 of their data centers. Everybody is moving to the cloud. Google, Azure, Amazon, right? AWS, they offer services. You don't have to run your own equipment, right? There's plenty of people who do that for you. You pay for what you use, and off you go. Right, so I just want to tell you a couple of stories. So this is dating back to 1979. And we had no computing equipment at that point in-house. So Prof managed to somehow do some deal with the Department of Education and the Department of, I think, Census and Statistics to use their mainframe computers. And they were all card punch machines where you had to punch things on cards. So he managed to acquire a card punch machine which was down in the room under the staircase in the maths department. And we used to write programs out on paper and then punch them and send them off through what we call, or what I termed a POB network protocol. POB standing for peon on bike, right? So the peon used to take the bicycle and the cards and take it to wherever. They used to run the thing, and the aforementioned peon would bring all the output back. And depending on what happened, we'd either jump up and down for joy or cry if there were errors. It took about 2 days for this round circle. Now, I remember on my birthday, I think in 1979, Prof called me into his room and he was in a furious mood. And on his table, he had a pile of computer output, right? And he asked me very loudly, "What did you write to waste thousands of rupees of paper," right? So apparently I had written something, it had been sent off to the Department of Census and Statistics, and it had produced a massive mound of paper. And then when Prof saw my face, which probably had a look of absolute horror, he told me, "Go and find out what happened here." So we went away and did a bit of investigation. What we found is the peon had sort of fallen off near the eye hospital junction, fell off the bike. The rubber band that wrapped the cards together snapped. And he wasn't quite sure, wasn't knowledgeable enough to realize that the order of the cards was absolutely critical. So he collected them approximately and took them off. Now, unfortunately, IBM 360s, which were awesome pieces of equipment, didn't quite know how to deal with approximate ordering. They expected things to be in order. So that thing threw a massive fit and printed out a whole lot of error messages, hence Prof's wrath. We didn't have the guts to tell him. We kind of kept saying we're looking at it, and it was many months later when I finally told him. He actually thought it was funny. Talking of card punch machines, the first time I saw Prof doubled over laughing with tears coming down his face was when this following event happened. So we had a HP computer, which was like a tiny computer, and Prof managed to acquire a card punch reader, like would read punch cards. And we had a whole lot of data on the punch cards. So Mr. Nandasara and myself, we did a bit of a test to make sure that it would read the cards. And the test worked fine. So while Prof and a couple of others looked on approvingly, Nande turned the power on, loaded the thing with, I don't know, a couple of thousand cards, and hit the start button. Now, card punch readers are supposed to read cards. This one was different. It set about shredding the whole lot into fine powder and filling the whole room up with powder. And finally, it only stopped very reluctantly when Nande pulled the power off. At that point, Prof doubled up and was laughing. There were tears pouring his eyes. Nande and I burst into tears, and the card punch reader burst into flames. So much for card punchers. Even when I see them now, they're not my favorite piece of equipment. Right, now, we live in this world, anybody working in the IT industry, right? These terms, they are of agile, lean, continuous development, continuous integration. They have become the fundamental way people develop systems, right? Gone are the old-fashioned methods where you go out and you carry out analysis and you figure out what needs to be done. Then you go and lock yourself up in a room, and for months on end you write some stuff, and then you deploy it, and by then the person who wanted it doesn't want it anymore, and everything doesn't work well. So the current technology is this whole idea of constantly developing, and it's an agile technology. Continuous delivery, continuous integration, and above all, being able to empower people who might be very junior to do a lot, right? So I was looking at this and I thought, okay, the way Prof ran his structure, we ran the place. There was Prof at the top, and everybody else was equal, right? You could be head of or tail of or have 100 publications. Prof wasn't particularly interested, right? On numerous occasions, he'd ask Subanasena, who was his assistant, and me for advice, and he'd take whatever was sensible. He didn't care whether it came from me because I, had a degree or something. He wasn't interested. He was just interested in what was being said, right? He ran it as a very flat, standard sort of operation. And in a sense, when I look back, he empowered everybody without having to get a lot of approval to do what is currently being done in the whole software industry. You get a task, you go and do it. You don't need to go around and get 10,000 people to sign off 18,000 pieces of paper. You don't need to wait for approval. You're empowered to do things. That's the way Prof ran his thing. He hated red tape. He absolutely hated red tape. Every time he saw red tape, his face became the same color as the tape. And he just absolutely hated it. He could control it inside his own department, but obviously he had to deal with all the outside bodies. And he really had a pathetic, like a real hatred of red tape. So the point I'm making is before agile and lean and continuous delivery and empowering people to do their tasks, Prof had the whole concept down pat, right? He had lots of people. He told them to do something. They were empowered to go and do some scary things even, right? There was no need to go and get approval from a whole range of people. This again was 1980s, right? In 2018. Prof had that going pretty well. Now, before I forget, I just need to mention another little story. So Nande and I, we got used to doing what we call 48-hour stints, because Prof used to make plans and then he'd tell us that things need to be done, and normally the lead time between him telling us something needed to be done and the time it needed to be done was pretty short. So we got used to working 48 hours at a stretch, right? So that was our favorite thing. We stopped for toilet breaks and meal breaks, and sometimes we did that in parallel, pretty unhygienic, but pretty efficient, so that we could cram as much as possible into 48 hours. After I migrated to Australia, I realized that having worked with Prof, it had made me used to like a category 10 cyclone, right? So working with the Australians, the kind of problems they had was like a mild drizzle, right? I never felt under pressure. I was used to handling so many things that it was absolutely breeze. I've never had any issues like being able to do things at short notice. Right, now, Prof loved to automate things. He really had a passion to automate everything in sight. But as the Vice Chancellor pointed out, he also realized that there are consequences of automation. We'll get to that in a minute, right? So one of the first things large-scale projects he decided to do was to automate the calculation of all the results of the science faculty, right? That was all done manually. And Prof handed that task over to us, which we duly did. The first run was about 2 days after we got married. So my wife and I were on our honeymoon. We had written this system in Fortran, and on our honeymoon, all that we could think of was Fortran code, right? At some point in the future, we are going to need some therapy for that. So far, it's not been a major problem, but I think we are going to definitely need therapy. We might send the director of the UCSC the bill for that therapy. So we automated the thing, and Prof had a lot of pushback because the traditional establishment, they really didn't believe that a computer could do that satisfactorily. So they wanted to run the whole thing in parallel, work it all out manually. And what they found, Prof in the meantime had gone overseas, so he was away during that period. What they found was that they actually had a whole lot of errors in the manual system, which they picked up because of the automated system. So the Vice Chancellor at the time, the late Professor Stanley Vijayasundara, was quite impressed, and when Prof came back, he told him, right, let's automate things. Now that's a dangerous thing to tell Prof. You tell him, let's automate things, you'll be very sorry, and so Professor Vijayasundara was, because Prof started planning automation on a massive scale. While writing this, I remembered a thing he told me. Now, Prof had an Audi. I don't know whether you all can remember that. When it was new, it was a really nice car. But as it got a bit older, due to lack of spares and other problems, it turned into a deranged monster, right? Some days it would start, other days it would refuse to go forward, it would do various things. I spent a fair bit of my academic career pushing Prof's car round and round the campus. We became pretty good at it because all the academics, in fairness, had horrible cars. The only exceptions were Professor Appasinghe, who had a beautifully maintained Austin Mini, and Professor Valentine Joseph, who rode a bicycle. Right? We pushed pretty much everybody else's cars. So one day after one of these episodes where the car wouldn't start, Prof turned around and told me, I wish I could sit in the back seat and this thing would drive me home. Right? So traditional response to Prof is you go, yes, sir. Then he looked at me and said, no, I'm serious. One day it's going to happen. To which I replied, traditional response, yes, sir. And then I thought to myself, what a load of rubbish, right? I mean, Fast forward to today, right? Teslas, I've seen a few here. right? There are still a lot of legal, issues with driving out in public, but the technology is there. These pictures are from the University of La Trobe in Melbourne, where they have they have 3 automated buses that drive around inside the campus. They collect people from car parks and bus stands and drive them to the various faculties, right? So the technology is there. Over the weekend, we went up to Beruwala and came back, and while sitting in the van, I was wondering how an automated vehicle would cope with 3-wheelers going sideways, people overtaking 8 to a lane. I don't think that technology is still there, right? But who knows? But certainly in well-controlled internal environments, maybe there is scope for this, and time will tell. Right, Prof also had a bee in his bonnet, or to be mathematically accurate, he had a beehive in his bonnet. Right? He was absolutely fascinated by intelligent learning systems. This was back in the 80s, right? And he kept on going on about he hated this idea that if you had a problem, you had to go and study it and write a lot of code to solve that problem. And if you had another problem, you had to go and write a lot of code to solve that problem. That didn't gel very well with him. And he was like, why can't you use the computer to solve problems without all this coding? And he kept pushing this whole idea of intelligent systems. In order to get a bit of peace, we actually started teaching expert systems and Prolog and Lisp for the IT people, you may remember. And expert systems were a horrible thing because the technology hadn't developed. Basically, you had to put in a whole lot of rules that would tell it how to react with real life. That's an impossible task. It never worked. It never worked then. It won't work today. But Prof wasn't satisfied, so he started a whole lot of projects on expert systems. They were all terrible, dismal failures. I even had an MPhil student who chucked up in disgust after a year and went away, right? But Prof wasn't satisfied. He just kept pushing this thing, saying, somehow there should be a way. So around 1995, Prof had decided that he wanted to start all these postgraduate and undergraduate computing courses. So he hired a whole lot of assistant lecturers, sent them off to do their PhDs. So we assumed he would wait till they came back to start the course, not Prof. They left on the Monday. On the Tuesday, he said, right, we're starting the course next week, right? And we asked, okay, that's fine, but who's going to teach it? And he said, you all. So he already had a link with the University of Cardiff. He said, I'll get some people down from there. There was Dr. Kodikara, Dr. Russell Pierce, and myself. Dr. Kodikara and Dr. Pierce had formal education in computer science. The Cardiff people had formal education. I didn't. So the way Prof carved this up is he let them all pick their subjects of interest. And he told me, right, you do everything that nobody else wants. So that seemed like a reasonable deal. You don't argue with Prof. So I nodded and said, ha, sir. So I ended up doing a couple of courses, one on data structures, which I actually enjoyed. I sort of understood how it went, and it was all fine. And despite lots of misgivings, the courses were going pretty well. Then we had a problem. One Friday evening, Prof called me. He had some files under his arm, and he was rushing out to a meeting, and he wanted to talk to me. Now, my neural network was well trained by that point. I knew Friday evening, files, Prof rushing, wants to talk to me, bad news coming. So he looked me in the eye and said, you know that guy who was coming down to teach the neural networks course, he's fallen ill, he's not coming. You agreed to do everything that nobody else wanted, so you do this one. And then he smiled politely and left. So I stood there for a while, and the thing is, once you work with Prof, you become quite, robust. You don't panic too much. So you think, okay, what do I do? He had a bookshop, and the gentleman who ran that bookshop is in the audience, right? He had a tiny little bookshop. So I made a beeline to the bookshop. I knew there was nothing in the library covering neural networks. I barely knew how to spell the name. I wasn't sure whether it was N-E or N-E-U or whatever. I figured that out later. There wasn't Google or any of these places to Google things. Went to the bookshop, explained my problem to that gentleman. And after about an hour of inhaling dust, he finally found a little blue book which had the title Introduction to Neural Networks. So we thought, okay, fair enough. I have a book, the lectures start on Monday, how hard can it be? So I took the book home and realized that it was actually quite complicated. There were terms like backpropagation and feed-forward networks and gradient descent. By Monday morning, I had no idea what it was all about. I had absolutely no idea. So I was wishing that the world would end, but unfortunately the stupid world didn't end. Monday morning, I had to come and start teaching this undergraduate course. So I had one slide which had the title of the lecture, and a paragraph from the book. It took me about 5 minutes to deliver, and that left me 55 minutes. Now, for those who know me, I did go on time to that lecture, so I did have the full 55 minutes. So at that point, I had to tell the students pretty much what happened, and the fact that I knew nothing about neural networks, but they were quite a robust bunch. They went like, okay, let's learn. So we shared the book, and we all learned over the course of whatever months. That was probably the best course I think I ever delivered, because we all had to learn. Like, there was nobody to tell us what it was. We figured out through various things, and we ran that course, I think, 3 years. It became really popular. A lot of the people on those have gone on to do neural networks. In fact, there's a professor at La Trobe. He proudly mentions this story. What he doesn't say is whether he became very fond of it because of the nature of the material or my inability to teach it. He doesn't go into details, but he certainly said that that was where he thought, okay, that's what I'm going to do with my life. Neural networks back then were pretty pathetic. There was a lot of maths involved, and the computing power was nowhere close to what was required. But fast forward to the current day, neural networks are being used, machine learning and AI, they are being commoditized. There are so many cloud providers that offer the service. You can actually use it, right? It's just becoming so commonplace. It is actually very, very scary. People are using neural networks for all kinds of things. Sometimes they do it correctly, sometimes they don't, but the technology is there. I gave a talk to the stats department yesterday, and we were talking about chatbots, right? How you can develop a chatbot that will interact either with voice or just using text, where you can ask it questions and you provide the intelligence to answer. The ability for that thing to actually understand what somebody wants without any code being written is mind-blowing, right? So the machine learning technology has come a long way. The computing equipment to back it up is in the cloud. It's come a long way. And the scariest thing is it is moving very, very, very fast. And as the Vice Chancellor pointed out, whether you like it or not, it's going to become a part of everybody's life. It's not a thing for scientists somewhere in a university, right? People with very little experience can pick the technology up and do really useful things with it, right? I shared a whole lot of YouTube videos where there are hundreds of YouTube videos of really clever things that people have done using machine learning, and they tell you exactly how you can do it with your laptop. With a cloud provider, you don't need a master's degree or a PhD or anything. You can actually do a lot of stuff with it. Now, again, as the Vice Chancellor pointed out, having the technology is one thing, right? Learning how to use it is another. A lot of people in part of the world I am lose their jobs, right? Because they either get outsourced, that's not so fashionable now, but they get replaced with automation, right? So those people become unemployed. The guy sitting in front of me, he got retrenched or made redundant on a Friday. Young guy, 2 kids, both in private school. Suddenly out of the blue, he's on the dole, right? It causes huge human repercussions, right? And that's only going to get worse. So unless we as a human species figure out how to balance the massive movement in technology with things you should do and shouldn't do, we are going to make a total mess of it. If you ask me to bet, I think we'll make a total mess of it. Right? Given the human history, we are really good at moving technology. We are very not so good at learning where the boundaries are. How am I doing for time? I have another 15 minutes. That's good. Right. Here's some more catchphrases from the current generation of technology. People talk of fail fast, minimum viable product, right? Anybody in the private sector working in IT, you know exactly what I mean, right? Pivoting. What does that mean? Don't run projects for hundreds of years, right? Figure out what's going to happen. Always try to deliver what is known as a minimum viable product, right? That is, don't add all the bells and the whistles and everything. Get the barest skeleton thing working, release it, and then if it's any good, you can keep adding, right? Try to find out whether it's going to fail or work fast. Now, prof, again, back in the 1980s, these terms hadn't been even invented, right? If we tried to do something using the traditional waterfall method, we found out very quickly that it put him in a bad mood. So we stopped using that method. And without realizing what the terms were, we developed this method of building a quick prototype and then beefing it up as required. And we were doing all these things in the 1980s, courtesy of Prof's insistence, long before they became household terms and standard things that software development people do. So I think you would have understood by now, for anybody who didn't have the privilege of hearing about Prof, that he was one visionary and a half. Like, he could see a lot of stuff way into the future, right? Amazingly accurately. Here's another insight he had. I titled it Funky Low-Cost Equipment. So somewhere around 1981, Malika, 1982, Malika and I were in Reading, and the BBC Broadcasting Corporation, they released this computer called a BBC Micro, right? Little ugly thing in a plastic box, right? If it had been me, I'd have looked at it and gone, yeah. There were personal computers becoming available. The Apple IIe was around, right? You know, who needs this little piece of junk? Not Prof and Professor Rogerstern. The two of them decided that that was an awesome piece of equipment. So they set about getting funds, and they set up labs in our department where we had, I think, Mr. Gunawardena, who ran most of those labs this year as well. We would have had a couple of hundred of these, right? And then we realized why that was different, because it was a very simple machine. It had 64K of memory. Anybody writing programs, you try to write in 64K, you know how hard it is, right? I laugh when people with 512 meg of memory get out of memory errors, right? When you have 64K, you learn to program really efficiently because nothing works otherwise. So this tiny little thing had a lot of ways to interface stuff to it. You could connect all kinds of hardware equipment to it. You could connect sensors. You could do all kinds of things. And honestly, I think in terms of really understanding core computing principles, that little plastic box was a major player. And it was strange that both Prof and Roger decided that they would go ahead with it. You fast forward to the current era, I'm sure you all have all heard of the Raspberry Pi, right? It's actually scary to see this whole thing happening again, right? They've sold about 14 million or so Raspberry Pis. There's a massive cult following. It does pretty much similar things, albeit in a more modern way, as the BBC Micro, right? It's having the same impact. So 28 years ago, Prof could spot that. Didn't take him very long, right? Just amazing. Two more points to go. Now, Prof understood the importance of collaboration. He understood that having a fantastic department of anything is not of much use unless you go out into the real world and you deal with people. And he collaborated. He collaborated with the government of Japan, with universities in the UK. He collaborated with the Sugarcane Research Institute, the Tea Research Institute, the Rubber Research Institute, the Coconut Research Institute, every other research institute he could find. He collaborated with the Army, the Police, the Navy, the Air Force. He collaborated with everybody, right? And as a result, we found that we were doing a lot of teaching, but we were also doing a lot of consulting and other work. And it really made a difference to how we taught and what we taught, because there was a very practical feel to things. And it also made us very mindful about the fact that we had to constantly keep changing what we taught. You couldn't just teach the same thing for 100 years. You had to keep adapting. So when it came to collaboration, he knew how to handle it in an unbelievable way. He also knew that you needed to have a good reputation. Right? The era he worked in, there weren't likes. You couldn't count the number of likes on your Facebook page and figure out whether people liked you or not. But he understood the concept. He understood that you had to provide quality and that everybody needed to know that you were good. Now, to build up this reputation, we taught so many courses that we taught everywhere. Every faculty we were teaching stats, as the Vice Chancellor said, we were teaching stats and computing at the University of Colombo. Then Prof sent us off to the University of Morato. I used to drive up to Ruhuna University, teach there. We went everywhere. Then he got tired of universities and he sent us out to teach everywhere. We taught CIMA courses, we taught MBA courses, we taught everything, everywhere. And it was a bit tiring, and we never quite understood why he kept pushing that. But what he did over a period of time is it built up a massive reputation because people knew us, right? So if they knew anybody who was saying, what university should I go to, what should I do? The answer was there. When we first started getting people put computing as a higher preference than engineering to Peradeniya or Katubedda, we knew that we'd made it, right? A lot of the students with the best A-level results wanted to come here. I'd like to just close with the final story. I had become an assistant lecturer. It was probably about 10 hours since my appointment when Prof called me and he said, I have a lecture, and he sort of pointed in the general direction of the arts faculty, and he said, I have to go for a meeting, go and do it, and he left. So as I said, you get used to that kind of thing with Prof, so I knew there were a few pieces of information missing. My neural network figured that out. I didn't know where the lecture was, I didn't know what language it was in, because we taught in both English and Sinhalese. I didn't know what subject it was, I didn't know how many lecture it was, I didn't know how many students were there, I didn't know anything. So you think a bit. I found Sumana Sena and he managed to locate the class and the time, and then I realized I was 5 minutes late, so I went herring into the little lecture room next to the New Arts Lecture Theatre and kind of thought, okay, arts faculty must be Sinhalese, fine. Prof must be computing, so I launched into an arbitrary lecture starting on the basics of computing. And the students let me go for about 10 minutes before they pointed out that it was supposed to be a lecture in statistics. Now, I have a pretty thick skin having worked for Prof, so I took a deep breath and launched into a lecture on statistics, no problem. A couple hours later, Prof asked me, how did it go? And I say, not too bad, sir. At which point he says, good, do the rest of the course. So that was fine. So I came for the next lecture, and that's where I hit a big problem. In the New Arts Lecture Theatre, Professor J.B. Disanayake was having a lecture. Now, for those of you who don't know him, he doesn't have lectures, he has monumental events, right? The students were either clapping or applauding, like clapping, applauding, crying, shouting, laughing, and we could hear everything going on. Very soon, the students in my class weren't listening to me. They were more interested in what Professor JB was saying. It got even worse when I became more interested in what he was saying as well. So that lecture really didn't go very well. So I finished it and went to complain to Prof about how horrible Professor J.B. Disanayake is. Prof looked me in the face and said, "Why don't you go and learn to teach like him?" That seemed like a pretty good idea. So I had a vision of my teaching and all Professor J.B.'s students listening to me while he stood on the New Arts Lecture Theatre and nobody paying attention to him. That was a good dream. It didn't quite happen like that. But with a bit of selective stalking and watching and hearing what he did, plus I had an advantage. I was engaged to his niece, so I could do a lot of internal spying. I kind of modeled my teaching on what Professor JB did. What I noticed was he never had notes, he just spoke. And then one day he told me, you need passion, you need to love what you're doing, and you need to be humble. I never got the humble bit, but that's what he said. So I thought, right, passion, love for what I'm doing, and humble. I'll be all of that. Then I realized, you also need to know what you're talking about, right? He didn't mention that, but that goes without saying. So over a period of time, I modeled my teaching on him. And one day, many years later, I had just done a public lecture on artificial intelligence. Looking back, the content of what I have the slides of that. The content was absolute rubbish, but the delivery was pretty good. The next day, I turned up for work, and we had a massive rain, sort of a massive shower. The whole computer room was all flooded. Prof was standing at the entrance with buckets, handing out buckets to everybody. He looked at me and he said, I hear you had a really good lecture yesterday. I'm so proud of you. And then he gave me a blue bucket and said, go and help Kirti bail out water. Now, Prof wasn't one to give out compliments. Like, the most you got from him was a kind of a snort, where he went, and you knew you'd done a good job. For him to say, you did a really good job, so I had a big smile on my face. I actually had caught fever from all the being immersed ankle deep in water, but I smiled through the whole thing. And now, in conclusion, if I was asked to describe my life, right, I think I would summarize it by saying I studied at the University of Colombo and I worked for Prof. VKS. That would be my summary. He was an absolutely amazing man, and I'm so proud and happy that I got to work with him, albeit for a not so long time. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Seneviratne, for your valuable words. Ladies and gentlemen, with that positive note, I hope the excitement has built up this evening. Coming up next, we have a feast for your eyes and ears, yet again to enthrall us all with the magnificent beats. This amazing item will be presented by Professor Pradeep Ratnayake. Born in 1964, Professor Ratnayake made his first public performance in sitar at the National Museum Auditorium. He is a talented sitarist and has performed in various concerts in multiple countries and has also won awards for composing music for several movies. He is also a professor of music at the University of Sri Jayewardenepura. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, let's welcome on stage Professor Pradeep Ratnayake and Head of the Western Music Department of University of Performing Arts and Senior Lecturer Chandralal Amarakon for a beautiful sitar music display. Regions will be presented now by Mr. G.K.A. Dias, the chairperson of the ICT-ER 2018. So I cordially invite Mr. G.K.A. Dias on stage to present the conference inauguration address.
Professor Lakshman Disanayake, Vice Chancellor, University of Colombo, Deans of the Faculties, Dr. Kevin Seneviratne, orator today, the invited keynote speakers, distinguished guests, Mrs. Samaranayake, Mr. Edward, Registrar of the University of Colombo, Director and colleagues of the UCSC, staff of the other faculties, students, ladies and gentlemen. It is with great pleasure that I welcome all of you to the inauguration of the 18th International Conference on Advances in ICT for Emerging Regions, popularly known as ICTER. The conference, the workshops, and the tutorials will be held from 26 to 29 September at the University of Colombo School of Computing. This annual international conference, organized by UCSC, is technically co-sponsored by IEEE Sri Lanka section and the IEEE Computer Society. Subsequent to this conference, the conference proceedings will be submitted to IEEE Explorer to disseminate it among the larger international audience. This year, we have received 134 full paper submissions after a blind peer review with the assistance of more than 60 reviewers and cross-checking all the papers for plagiarism. We were able to select 61 papers for publication and 5 for poster presentations. The best research work presented will be invited to be published in an expanded form in the International Journal on Advances in ICT for Emerging Regions. This year, we have invited 5 keynote speakers for the main conference, which will be held on the 27th and 28th September. There will also be 2 workshops and 2 tutorials on 16th and 29th September. The keynotes scheduled for 27th will be given by Professor Koichi Yamada from Nagawa University of Technology, Japan, on aggregation of epistemic uncertainty, how to mimic human aggregation of subjective uncertain information. And Dr. Kevin Seneviratne, Senior Database Administrator and Consultants Data Services Group, Coles Supermarkets, Australia, on relational database technology. Does it have a future or is it just history? The 3 keynotes scheduled for 28th will be given by ACM Distinguished Speaker, Professor Paolo Tronfio from the University of Calabria, Italy, on social media analysis for trajectory discovery in large-scale events. Professor Christian Rona, Department of Information Technology, Uppsala University, Sweden, on battery dynamics and battery-free communication in IoT applications. And Dr. Kasun D'Souza, Senior Lecturer, University of Colombo School of Computing, on DApps, the token economy. I am sure most of you researchers will enjoy listening to these very relevant and interesting topics. One workshop already conducted by Dr. Nuwan Gunasekara from the University of Melbourne, Australia, on an introduction to Galaxy platform for computational biology. There will be 1 more workshop and 2 tutorials on the 29th September. The tutorials will be conducted by Professor Paolo Tronfio from University of Calabria on models and systems for big data analysis on HPC platforms and clouds, and by Dr. Ruwan Veerasinghe, former director of UCSC, on text analysis. The workshop The workshop will be conducted by Dr. Kasun D'Souza, Senior Lecturer, UCSC, on Smart Contracts, the Next Generation of Digital Commerce. On behalf of the organizing committee, I would like to thank all the sponsors, LSCG Technology, the London Stock Exchange Group, the platinum sponsor for this year, People's Bank and National Science Foundation, the gold sponsors, IFS, the silver sponsor, and co-sponsors, Board Pack and 99X Technology, for providing their fullest cooperation to make ICT 2018 conference a success. I would also like to thank the program co-chairs, all program committee members, reviewers, administrative and non-academic staff, Mr. Nandasara and the ADMTC media team for their invaluable support given to make this event a reality. A special thank you would go to our conference secretaries, Ms. Anradhini and Ms. Ruvanmani, for the immense contribution given throughout this year in organizing this event. In conclusion, I take this opportunity to wish all the ICT 2018 participants a pleasant and memorable conference, and I hope that you will share as well as take back with you the knowledge that would enhance your appetite for further research in the domain of computing. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Education, they say, is the key to success. It is the key that strengthens hope and advancements in knowledge. ICT-ER 2018 is a milestone for each of us, and it is time to extend our deepest thanks to all those who helped to make this story a success. So I kindly invite on stage Dr. Jeevani Gunatilaka, Head of Department of Information Systems and Engineering of UCSC, to extend the word of thanks.
Vice Chancellor, University of Colombo, Professor Lakshman Dissanayake, Deans of the Faculties, Rector of Sri Pali Campus, Registrar of University of Colombo, Dr. Kevin Seneviratne, Mrs. Samaranayake, invited guest, Director and staff of UCSC, ladies and gentlemen. I'm honored and privileged to propose a vote of thanks on this occasion to all those who have contributed in one way or the other to make this event a success. Let me express our deep sense of appreciation and gratitude to the Vice Chancellor of the University of Colombo for gracing this event despite his busy schedule. A special thanks to Dr. Kevin Seneviratne, who accepted our invitation and traveled all the way from Australia to deliver the 11th annual Vidya Jyothi Professor Samaranayake Memorial Oration on the topic From Applied Statistics to Data Science. We like to express our sincere thanks to Dr. Seneviratne for giving an excellent coverage on his special memories of late Professor V.K. Samaranayake, the father of computing in Sri Lanka. That indeed was a fascinating journey. I'm sure that all who are present here will have a lot to learn from the speech. Further, we express our deep and most sincere gratitude to Mrs. Samaranayake, who has raised this occasion with her presence here today. I also take this opportunity to thank the keynote speakers of the ICTA conference for your presence. An event like this cannot happen overnight. We, the UCSC, have been fortunate to be backed by a team of very motivated and dedicated staff. We cannot thank everyone enough for their commitment and devotion, a culture inculcated by late Professor V.K. Samaranayake. So on behalf of the UCSC, I would like to express my sincere thanks to the Director of UCSC, Professor K.P. Hevagamage, Chair ICTER 2018, Mr. Kapladais, Mr. Nandasara, and the ADMTC media team, and the academic, administrative, and non-academic staff who worked hard in making this event a success. Finally, we are most grateful to those who are present here today. We thank you for being with us this evening. It has been a great pleasure. Have a nice evening.
Thank you, Dr. Gunathilaka. We have come to the end of today's event. Please note that you are invited to enjoy the reception served at the hall located opposite to this auditorium following this event. Thank you for your participation, ladies and gentlemen, and I do hope that you have a productive and a fruitful time ahead in UCSC. All the best to you and have a pleasant night.